would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Welcome, you radical rebels, to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California. Member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to Friday, everyone. September 16th, 2016. Wrapping up yet another week. I hope it's been a great one for everyone. I know it's been a good one for my clients. They're happily settling into their new home, so that's a good thing. I have a nice cup of, a mocha. I have a mocha. Usually I do these so late in the day that having a mocha would be idiotic, but not today. So I'm fully fueled for today's show. Got a couple little tidbits here for you. Yeah. This is an interesting one. There are moments. I'm not sure if folks who listen to a show like this kind of get the things that go on in the back of a guy's head when he is recording his opinions on things and then uploading them to the internet. I got to think that this kind of I don't even know what to call it. This kind of it's almost like a little panic in the back of your head because you really don't want to be wrong, right? You don't want to give advice on something and then have people make a decision based on it and then have you be incorrect. So oftentimes I'll find myself kind of softening sometimes my points. Probably shouldn't do it. I'm sure one reason you tune in isn't to do what I tell you to do, but maybe just to hear what I have to say. See if it inspires some other kinds of thoughts in your head. And one drum I have been beating, one thing I don't think I've been horribly shy about is my assertion, and again, I get that we're talking about this again this week, but I keep seeing more and more stuff, so it becomes more and more relevant, is this whole idea that we are heading for a modern equivalent of the Industrial Revolution. And I believe I said the exact same words in yesterday's show or some other show earlier this week. But the further we go into this, the more true it is. So, of course, whenever I see an article that agrees with me, that's going to be right where I jump. So here's one from Market Watch. And they give a little, I don't know how, I'd love to get a little bit more info on the numbers here. I actually think this is potentially an underestimation of the impact of this. But this is an article that comes to us from Market Watch. As always, I will have a link to it in the show notes for today's show at www.therebelbroker.com. But the title of the article is Hello, Self-Driving Cars, Goodbye 4.1 Million Jobs. So there you go. There's someone who is sort of also seeing a dramatic connection. The thing I love is, maybe that's just the way we are as animals, right? We gravitate towards things that agree with things we've already decided are true. I like to think I entertain opposing viewpoints just to see if I can, find a different path. But I have a pretty full-on dedication to this being true. And I share it with you for a couple of reasons. I have had no one complain about me talking about this stuff, but sometimes I feel like this is just enough off the reservation of real estate that some folks might just be sitting in their cars going, oh, Robert, shut the hell up on the whole the modern industrial revolution stuff. The reality is I think this is going to change a ton of different things that absolutely, in some way I will find a validating reason for, affects real estate. It'll change commuting patterns. It'll change people's tolerance level for greater commutes. It'll change all kinds of different things. It'll change the way people earn their money. It'll change employment. And as I've said before, that is a huge thing in terms of being an underpinning of a robust real estate marketplace. You got to have people who can afford to buy houses, and to afford to buy a house, you got to have a job. So unemployment is inextricably linked to real estate, right? It's an underpinning. So there you go. I feel that I am A-okay sharing this stuff with you. But this is one of those things that not only changes how people work and earn a living or demand that people figure out a new way to make a living, if what you do is related to this or what you do can be easily automated. These are all things that we need to take into account in a shifting marketplace. And I think this represents a potential gigantic shift. Not happening next week or next month or next year, but I would say within the next 5 to 10 years, tops, by 2025, I'd be willing to bet we have huge swaths of area that have been dramatically affected by this. And as I've said before, the financial motivation for this is now huge. And there's a second story I'm going to share with you today that dovetails into this. But I wanted to share this. According to this particular article, quote, when the self-driving car revolution firmly takes hold, see, that's the coffee. That's the problem. I shouldn't be drinking these things in the middle of a show because the caffeine does things to me. I'm a caffeine wimp, by the way. I have one a day, and I am completely whacked out of my head with caffeine. Anyway, when the self-driving car revolution firmly takes hold, there will be carnage, according to Wolf Richter of the Wall Street blog. Not the car crash kind, though that is a prevalent fear, but on the employment front. Quote, the magnitude of this problem is breathtaking, he wrote, citing government figures. He says that 4.1 million jobs, the stat of the day in our need to know column, are at risk, including chauffeurs, drivers of trucks, cabs, and rideshare vehicles. Dovetail, and if you need support for this, dovetail it with any of the other stories we've talked about just in the last couple of weeks. You don't even need to pay attention to the articles I shared with you from a month ago, or from 2 months ago, or from 3 months ago, where anything with wheels on it that moves anything, people, products, whatever, from point A to point B, are ripe for replacement. We talked about the UPS truck driver, who's probably not long for this world, as soon as they blend drones with delivery trucks. And Mercedes has built one. Go Google it. It's a cool-looking little van that's got drones that park on the top of the van with a system underneath it that deliver packages to the drone to be delivered. So literally, all this truck would have to do, if it was an automated vehicle with no driver, they could spend the whole day delivering products with not a human being involved, right? Cabs, rideshare, long hauling, I think, is personally the most likely to get the very first whipping on this, just because once you've done the automation for getting a complicated urban area worked out, freeways have got to be easier, right? Because that's more or less, you got to worry about getting onto the freeway, and then you stay on that freeway for a really long time. So these are all things that I think feed into this. Quote, and they're talking about people who occupy these jobs. Quote, these people can't easily switch to writing software. There's no room for them in manufacturing. And this is dovetailing in with another story we talked about. Quote, even the fast food sector is getting automated, as are many other jobs, including writing stories for the major wire and news services. That one I haven't heard of. Richter said, it all might be happening faster than society is prepared to deal with it, and we're not even talking about it. I love that I've been talking about it for over a year. So I don't know if how much I should be patting myself on the back, but I feel like one of those folks who caught onto this one really early. Maybe it's because I'm also lucky enough to have friends that are intimately involved with a lot of this stuff. And when you talk to them about what the technology is capable of and what they've tested behind closed doors that isn't out rolling yet, you realize, well, this is nuts. And like I said before, the changes that are nuts have nothing to do with the hardware. In other words, you get the very first self-driving car. And of course, there will be refinements to the various pieces of hardware. But to make it do better, to make it better at its job, it's an upload. You get it within the range of your wireless internet connection at your house. It'll detect that it's now in wireless, and it'll download an update. And suddenly, it's a better automated car, right? So that's why this is kind of both exciting and scary, because this is one of these things that I think is going to take off like crazy once it gets going. And the first time, no matter how much you enjoy driving, the first time your commute involves you sitting in your car and then rotating your car away from the steering wheel and having a little desk there for you where you can do work or read or do whatever you want to do while your car drives you to work, I'm willing to bet you're going to be a fast convert to this. I know I would be. I would be all up for that kind of an experience where I tell the car where I want to go, even if it takes longer than it would take me to get there. I don't care because I'm able to do whatever the heck I want. And given the nature of our connectedness, you could do anything. You could watch a movie in that position. You can do whatever you want. Anyway, let's see. The potential savings will outweigh the human cost as companies fight for profit margins. Drivers are one of the biggest expenses for transportation companies, and they have to sleep and take vacation. Not so with their autonomous replacements. Uber, a company expected to benefit from the advancements in a big way, said recently that it wouldn't be phasing out drivers entirely. Quote, "We believe ride-sharing will be a mix with services provided by both drivers and self-driving Ubers." We talked about that the other day. I believe the city was Pittsburgh, where they're already doing it. They're leaving folks in it. But of course, and I called it, I said that for the first year, there will be people in the cars. And as soon as people start doing the math and realizing the line item for the human person sitting in the car while the automated stuff is going on is costing them money, those folks will go away and it'll all be automated. Let's see. Quote, "We don't expect Uber to move to driverless cars in New York City anytime soon, but they can expect we would launch an aggressive campaign, the likes of which they have yet to see to halt such a move." So New York City is a perfect example. My argument would be that the only thing you're going to see happen with some of these areas, and it's going to depend on how strong the unions are. The taxi cab union is ridiculously strong in New York. So yeah, that might be a delay. But I believe that eventually, and it may take longer in some areas, downtown places like New York City, like Manhattan, San Francisco, will become automated car-only zones. You will not be allowed to drive a car in those areas because they'll discover that without having to enlarge the roadways, without having to change much of anything other than putting perhaps navigation assistance devices into the roadways for these vehicles, that everything will move faster and more efficiently without more road space. Because it can all be controlled with cooperative automated driving, meaning that it's not just a single car navigating the area it's in. It's a single car that's communicating with a decentralized network of all the cars around it to decide what it's going to do. And once you achieve that, it's like blood pumping through your body. And you know how when you're at a stoplight and it turns green and you're way back and you're wondering why aren't we all just going? Well, in an automated scenario, you do all just go. Right? Because everybody knows exactly, everyone's connected. You become a train of cars instead of a single car with a single individual making a decision on whether or not you're moving forward. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting technology, and I think it's ridiculously interesting, but I'm a geek and I need to feel like I'm hiding that sometimes. So there's that. Let's see. There's a quote here from somebody who's an idiot who says, "Right now it's all hype and false hope to raise funds, billions and billions of funds. There will be delays, setbacks, and gruesome accidents. Some people will call for putting an end to this, and others will refuse to get into those cards. Regardless of any of that, this is going to happen. The advantages are too high. The net number of folks that get hurt is going to dwindle to almost nothing. And what people will realize is the more you go towards automation, the less risk there is to people. And that'll just be the way it is. If you want to go into Manhattan, you'll have to park somewhere outside of the zone and then get yourself into a automated vehicle to navigate around in the city. I have no doubt that will eventually happen. All right. Next story. I've got one more story on this, which we're going to cover in a minute, but we're just going to take a quick break right here. But we'll be right back with yet another example of how this automation revolution is continuing, and it's going into even more job descriptions than we were originally thinking about. So hold on. We'll be right back. Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909. Welcome back, everyone. We're kind of doing a quick review of some new info relating to my claim that we're kind of heading for a modern industrial revolution with in general automation, but with driverless cars, all of these other kinds of things. We're just sort of sticking our big toe into the waters of this one right now, but it's going to happen fast and furious. And it's going to be one of those things where there's just too much upside for anyone to really stand against it. And as the software evolves with each and every day of on-the-road experience, it's just going to get that much better. So it's inevitable, really, to be honest. That's the other example I wanted to talk about. This is an article from Engadget where we're seeing all kinds of new jobs being replaced here. Robots sew a shirt automatically using stiffened fabric. It uses a substance called polyvinyl alcohol, which is a plastic stiffener, which is already used in the garment industry for stiffening different products that are being made during the creation process, and then they get rinsed out and reused so that you can then ship a nice soft product. But the point here is they're now replacing humans with this stuff. There was a demo of this done by a machine called a Subo, and they want to remove humans from the garment industry. And of course, this will be sold as a humane thing to do because of how I know from our perspective as Americans, we consider a lot of what the garment industry does to working folks in other countries as being terrible. And the solution here will be to provide a scenario where none of those people get any money. So that'll be much better for them. They'll have nothing to spend, and they won't be able to afford where they live, and that'll make it much cheaper for us to have shirts. But we won't have to feel guilty because we won't be thinking that some poor person from overseas is being taken advantage of in the creation of our garments. Garments have been sewed together by humans since time immemorial, but a company called Subo wants to replace us with automatons. It has developed a robot that can assemble a T-shirt by simply stiffening the fabric so that it's more like a piece of cardboard. Again, this is already something that the garment industry does. This isn't something they have to do specifically for this application. The arm then picks up the pre-cut pieces using suction and feeds them into a sewing machine. When it's finished making the shirt, the bot simply drops it into hot water to remove the non-toxic polymer that was stiffening it. So this is huge. And what's interesting is there was another article which I read a week ago, which didn't really apply to real estate, so I didn't share it with you. I was very good. I didn't go off into the weeds. But it was talking about how in China they're having a lot of problems with labor because the costs are going up. The Chinese folks are demanding more higher wages, more benefits, those types of things. So this is exactly what they're doing. They're saying, well, you know what, instead of paying you more and giving you more benefits, we're going to put in more robots. Foxconn, which is the company that makes Apple products, is doing that. In Brazil, they're building a completely automated factory. So in every area, and so soon you'll be able to buy yourself an iPhone or an iPod or whatever that's been untouched by human hands. It will have been assembled completely by machines. And the folks who were doing it, it's hard to tell what's going to happen with them. I'm sure there's going to be a whole other set of problems that come out of that, but we'll have to wait and see what those are. So that's it for that particular one. I've got a few other tidbits now that kind of fit a little bit more into trying to see over the horizon relating to the market. Who are the folks that are going to be the buyers the next time around? And are we going to see a big shift in what folks want? And that was the most clumsy transition segue from one subject to another I could possibly have done, but there it is. I'll try harder next time. So, I know we've tried to, at least I've tried to eliminate the pigeonholing of millennials, right? Everyone seems to be thinking millennials are the thing. We got to keep an eye on millennials. I've kind of poo-pooed that idea because in my hands-on experience, I haven't really seen a lot of the things that folks have been talking about. But I thought, you know what, let's take another step back. These are really the folks who are at bat right now when it comes to the real estate world, right? The next generation ahead of them are kind of in that transitionary point where they're either going to stay where they are. We've already talked about that age group, or they're looking to potentially downsize. And I started thinking about the life cycle of someone. When you're buying, when you're not buying, and why you change, why you move out of one house into another house. And I started coming across a few articles that I thought were very interesting, kind of dovetailed into that idea, and really made me think, as people who are either going to be competing with these folks to buy our own home, or as folks who are going to be out there trying to buy an investment property, whether it's something we want to flip or something we want to buy and rent, knowing this seems important because it could change the real estate product we want to offer, whether we're renting or whether we are flipping. And those are things that are important to know. Being able to spot an upcoming trend in terms of demand, I think, is a key thing, particularly ones that you might be able to apply across a generational group, right? So here's the first one. And I mention it because, and it's totally not a real estate thing, but I think it's kind of revealing about the generation. The headline is, pets are becoming a replacement for children. Millennials more likely to own pets, less likely to have kids. Now, this was a quote in a report published this week. The Post found that Americans born between 1980 and 2000 are less likely to be parents and more likely to be pet owners than previous generations. Then there's some unsexy words that goes on to say, of those surveyed by Mintel, 71% of men between ages 18 and 34 had dogs and 48% had cats. 62% of women in the same age range had dogs and 35% had cats. Meanwhile, 50% of Americans have dogs and 35% have cats. Researchers told the Post that delayed parenthood and more flexible work arrangements may have contributed to higher rates of pet ownership among millennials than having children. I find that interesting because it means one of two things, right? It either means a greater percentage of folks have decided not to do the family thing, or a greater percentage are delaying it further. And I think that the delaying it further is at least as far as we should go, simply because given all the other things we've talked about on this show relating to things that are influencing the decision on whether or not to purchase a property, this seems like a natural thing, right? With the concerns that folks in this generation have about the cost of buying a home and all these other types of things, the idea of looking at it from the standpoint of, I can't afford it, seems like a pretty reasonable place to go. So what does that mean for us? Does it mean that the 2-bedroom home suddenly is a little bit more desirable than it has been historically? I'm not so sure we can go that far. It may increase it. It may not become dominant, but it could make that 2-bedroom house a more reasonable investment in terms of something that you're willing to rent. The market for folks who would want to rent that may actually see a bit of a surge, simply because for these folks who are making the decision not to have children right now, well, then they don't need that 3rd bedroom. By and large, when the decision comes, they really need that 3rd bedroom, it's one of two scenarios. It's either a couple and each one of them wants to have their own personal hobby room kind of thing, or it's, we've got a master bedroom, we've got one bedroom that's like our office for both of them, and then there's a 3rd bedroom for the kiddo, right? Well, if there's no kiddo, does that 3rd bedroom hold the allure that it did before? And then when we blend in the cost differences currently between 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, that option sure does seem to become more attractive potentially to consumers. So anticipating that could mean that and if this seems to be ground truth in your area, embracing a willingness to go ahead and get that 2-bedroom house as an investment may not be horrible. It may not be a terrible idea. Next, from Housing Wire, renters still not ready to buy a home. Consumers expect home prices to rise. Now, this is relating to a survey that was just done by the National Association of Realtors. It's the Housing Opportunities and Market Experience Survey. Part of this is due to a misconception among first-time homebuyers about how much of a down payment is needed to buy a home, according to the National Association of Realtors. Now, you always have to remember that anything that comes from the National Association of Realtors wants to explain or try to change the thought process of anyone who decides I need to wait on buying a home. Remember, their bread is buttered by activity in the marketplace. And if you're deciding not to buy, that is not buttering their bread. So when they say things like this, I think it's smart to take it to the next level and try to maybe think a little bit more deeply into this. My personal feeling is that it is not just the whole misconception about how much money they have to put down. If the ads I see for loans are any indicator, anybody who doesn't know that they could get a loan with 3% down is living in a cave. So I have a really hard time believing that it would be statistically significant enough to even make a blip of folks who aren't aware that there are avenues. Now, are there folks who might just simply be overall intimidated and not want to jump in? Yeah, but I think that it stretches beyond this concern about how much money they'd have to come up with for a down payment. I think that the concerns go deeper than that. I think it comes down, and the consumer confidence numbers tend to back this up. This is a more general, I really don't like the way things are going kind of a vibe, rather than a, well, golly, I don't have enough money in the bank to make this work kind of a vibe. Next on our hit parade here from CNBC, millennials will be renting for a lot longer. So let's blend a little here, right? We already talked about no kids in the foreseeable future for whatever reason, either because they're not getting them or because they're going with dogs and cats first. A general hesitancy to jump into buying. And millennials, if they're not already living in their parents' basement, they're sticking with renting. They don't want to take on the responsibilities of home ownership. That sure does spell to me a more general uptick in the potential for rentals. So even though we've got some people, remember we had that, I can't remember who it was. It was one of those the sky is falling kind of sites. I can't remember what the heck it was, where they were trying to talk about how we had totally overpopulated with rental units. And then on this show, we revealed that just given growth in population, that wasn't the case. I honestly think that we could potentially see a pretty long-lived upswing in the demand for rentals. So that may change your strategies. Given these numbers, maybe you're not going to be the buy and flip unless you're in one of these really impacted metro areas. They're just seeing so much demand and you're enjoying so much market-influenced value increase on your property. Right? If you buy it by the end of escrow, it's suddenly worth $20,000 more because that's the way the market's working, well, then maybe flipping is the right thing for you to do. If not, or if you're seeing a commensurate increase in rent as well, and you now own this property and you make some changes to it, and you discover you can make a ridiculous profit per month by renting it, well, those are numbers you're going to want to run, right? You want to know the difference between the return on investment for selling versus the return on investment for renting. So make sure to do that math. I think that the sustainability of becoming a landlord is just supported more and more by the numbers that we're seeing as it relates to millennials. I'll go ahead and, of course, put links up to all the articles that we've discussed today. But in terms of seeing the future, looking into that future ball, the crystal ball, I honestly think that what that spells is not a dramatic decline in rentals, or at least not demand for them. I think it spells a continuing resilience in terms of what you can expect from your experience as a landlord. You're going to be able to find tenants easier, it sounds like. You're going to be able to keep that property occupied at a close to 100% of the time kind of a rate. So that's the direction I would go. I think these numbers reinforce my love for the buy and hold strategy rather than the buy and flip. But let the numbers speak for themselves, right? Just make sure you're doing both sets of numbers. And that way you're making the most educated decision for yourself that fits best with your strategy. I know I haven't really dipped in. I didn't start the show off with the whole go visit the website and send me a message thing. But please, if you would like, do that. Go on over to www.therebelbroker.com. You can click the Contact Rebel Broker menu item, go to the page, fill it out, send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. I'd be happy to reply. If you want to give the show a little love and get a little love back, potentially, click that button at the top of the page titled Take the Survey to support the show. If you do, just follow the instructions, give an email address at that first screen that pops up, and then when you click the Take the Survey button that's on that little screen, use the same email address, please. The two email addresses need to match. If you do that, you will be entered to win a $50 Amazon.com gift card. Yeah, that's right. I'm a giver. We're going to do that drawing on October 1st, or, well, Jesus, I don't even know if October 1st is a show day, but the closest show day to October 1st, we will do the drawing. Just to clear something up from a listener who emailed me, yes, that will include anyone who has already participated. We already had, I don't know, something over 50. I can't remember that. It was between 50 and 75 people had already filled out the survey. Though anyone who's already done it and included their email address will absolutely be included in the drawing, so don't worry about that. You don't need to do it again. However, if you did do the survey and you did not include an email address, you do need to do it again, because obviously I can't pick a blank email address to send money to, because there's no way for me to do that. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll talk to y'all next time.